What's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video, and today I want to talk for a little bit about superstar trades in the NBA. This is, of course, a very hot topic. It feels like every offseason at this point, but this one in particular, with the news a couple of weeks ago that Damian Lillard officially requested a trade from the Portland Trail Blazers. This is something we were all waiting on for a while. It has finally happened, and not much is going on with the situation. I made a full video, the video right before this one on my channel, talking all about the Damian Lillard trade situation, why nothing is happening, and why nothing might happen for a while. So if you want to hear me talk more about that, go check that video out. But it got me thinking about what other superstar players could potentially be on the move at some point soon. You know, James Harden requested a trade from the 76ers, and this was all amplified by earlier today when there was a quote that was going around Twitter from Joel Embiid, where he said that, you know, my main goal right now is to win a championship, whether that's in Philly or somewhere else. A lot of people start talking about, does Joel want to leave Philly, this, that, is he the next superstar to be traded? Odds were coming out in sports books about his next team if he does get dealt at some point soon. Whenever one of these big names even pops up in rumors, everybody's like, oh my god, are they going to be traded? Where are they going to go? This, that. So in today's video, I want to talk about Embiid and a few other superstar-ish caliber players that I think we could potentially see either leaving in free agency or getting dealt within the next few years. And at the end of the video, want to try and predict which one of the guys I talk about is the one that gets moved first. A few names that I'm not going to talk about in this video include Damian Lillard. Like I said, he's been talked about nonstop. James Harden. I'm not going to talk about Pascal Siakam, even though the Raptors are rumored to be looking at dealing him. He apparently doesn't seem to really want to be dealt, so I don't know if he's going anywhere anytime soon. Same thing with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, both guys that could be moved, but I want to focus on some bigger names at this point. Same thing with Jared Allen, Karl Anthony Towns, so I think the Wolves could trade by this upcoming deadline, maybe next offseason. So those are some other players that I think could be dealt at some point soon, but I'm not going to cover in this video just to let you know. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the players. Since I mentioned him earlier in the video, let's begin with Joel Embiid. Like I said, there was that quote that came out earlier today that's got Sixers fans kind of freaking out, being like, oh my gosh, he's going to try and leave at some point soon. Is this the start of him asking out? A lot of other teams' fan bases saying, okay, we've got to get our Joel Embiid package ready. There was a number of news outlets putting out their odds for what Embiid's next team could be if he does end up requesting a trade or getting dealt at some point soon. There are a lot of rumors out there, a lot of talk going on around him and the 76ers, which is somewhat understandable. Now, I don't think an Embiid trade is imminent or anything, but there's a good chance that a situation arises over the next few years, which makes Embiid decide that, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else. There's the fact that they've disappointed for a number of years. They've made it to the second round where they probably should have won, like this past year. They were up 3-2 in Philadelphia, couldn't get it done against the Celtics, lost in Game 7. In 2021, they were the 1 seed, lost the Atlanta Hawks in Game 7 in Philadelphia again. Back in 2019, they played the Toronto Raptors and lost on that ridiculous Kawhi Leonard shot. They've had some chances with Joel Embiid on this roster to make a conference finals, but they just haven't been able to get it done for one reason or another, whether that's, you know, a number of stars dropping off in the playoffs, Embiid dealing with an injury, coaching, regardless of what it is, they haven't been able to get it done. So that probably is weighing on Embiid a little bit. I know the media has been really harsh on Joel Embiid over the past few years for being an MVP type player, especially now that he's won the award, but not getting it really done in the playoffs. Again, there's a number of reasons why it's not all on Joel Embiid, but being the face of the franchise, being an MVP type player, that pressure is mostly going to go to you. So does he feel that pressure and say, I just want to go win a championship somewhere? Maybe it's outside of Philadelphia. The team is also not in a great position right now with James Harden requesting a trade, and even if he stays for this upcoming season, he's getting older at this point. Tyrese Maxey is great, and I think he has all-star potential, but I don't think he's going to be the second best player on a championship team alongside Joel Embiid, and I don't even know if Embiid has time to wait for Maxey at this point, because while he's not getting older, he has been pretty injury-prone over the course of his entire career, so you have to wonder how many more years does he have of playing at an MVP level. They also don't have a lot of cap space. Now they're going to get more from Tobias Harris, his contract expiring, James Harden if he's back this next year, or even if they trade him, maybe they get some expiring contracts, and they could have room to bring in stars, but are they going to be able to convince a star to come over? If they trade James Harden too, can they get a star in that type of deal, or is it just going to be role players? There's so many question marks around the Sixers at this point that it's kind of hard to know whether or not they're going to be a consistent contender over the next couple of years, which is Joel Embiid's prime. He just won an MVP. You've got to do whatever you can to put talent around him, but the path to doing so isn't super clear. So with all that in mind, I don't think it's unrealistic to think that Embiid might request out in the next few seasons. I think it's a very possible thing, although I don't think it's as eminent as some people are saying after that quote. There's another MVP candidate out east that I don't think enough people are discussing as a potential guy to go somewhere else sometime soon, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Of course, there were all those rumors about him going to Miami before he signed that contract extension with the Bucks that he's now on. He signed it with Milwaukee, won a championship in 2021, and with that championship win, it felt like Giannis would probably be a Bucks lifer, or at least one for a really long time. But now that we're a few years in the future, things are a lot more unclear. They just lost in the first round to the Miami Heat, and I do still think coming into the season the Bucks will be a championship contender, but it's a bit shakier than it seemed like they might be for the past couple of seasons. Chris Middleton has dealt with a lot of injuries over the past few years, and while he did show a lot of signs of being the Chris of old this past season when he was healthy, there are also some signs of regression. The defense never really looked good, the offense was inconsistent, and maybe now after a full offseason and hopefully a year without injuries, Chris can get back to the player that he was. But with those injuries racking up and the fact that he's beyond 30 now, there's a real chance that we've seen the best of Chris Middleton and he might start to decline soon. Jrue Holiday is also in his 30s, and he said on a podcast at some point, I think in the last few months, something like that, that he might consider retirement within the next few years. When this Bucks contract wraps up, he may end up retiring. So you probably don't have that many more years with Jrue on the team, who has been integral to your success over the past few seasons. And even if he does decide not to retire, he's getting older. Brook Lopez is way up there in the 30s. He was a defensive player of the year caliber guy this past season, but how long is he still going to be at that level? I just don't know. The Bucks are a little bit concerning with the core aging and declining around Giannis. I still, again, think they're championship contenders now, but next season, the season after that, are they still going to be on that level of team? And if they aren't, does Giannis see the writing on the wall around him saying, okay, the core group of guys that I've been with here for a while, it's not the exact same group. I don't know if we're true championship contenders right now. I mean, Giannis himself can make the Bucks really, really good, but the Eastern Conference has a lot of great young rising talent, rising teams. I'm sure more stars are also going to end up over there as well. Maybe Giannis decides that Milwaukee's no longer the spot where he feels comfortable with competing for a championship and decides to go somewhere else. He does kind of feel like a guy that would want to be a Bucks lifer and stick through those down times, in my opinion. But I don't think it's crazy to say that Giannis may be on the market within the next few years. I mean, his contract isn't even lasting that much longer itself, so maybe he just walks in free agency, and a Giannis free agency would be wild. That would be so much fun to watch. All these different teams try to bring him in. I think there would be a number of squads that would be rapidly trying to clear cap space for that impending free agency. I mean, Embiid could potentially be on the move at some point soon. I think Giannis is also in that conversation, so two of the top guys in the Eastern Conference, I don't think it's unrealistic to say that they could be on the market at some point soon. I'm not saying right now, but maybe within the next few years. Going now over to the Western Conference, I want to talk about Luka Doncic. Now, like the other two guys, I don't think a Luka trade request is imminent. It's not something that has to be on your radar right now, but it could certainly pop up soon. The Mavericks, after making that Western Conference Finals appearance a couple of years ago, have been disappointing. Well, it was only one season, but they let Jalen Brunson walk in the offseason, which was a disastrous move. You saw how good he was for New York this past year when they could have just offered him an extension earlier on in the year. They decided not to do that. They traded for Kyrie Irving at the deadline. It's a disaster, didn't work out. And I do think going into the season, they can be better. I think it's a good team that they've built over there in Dallas. Kyrie and Luka are going to be one of the best offensive duos in the entire league. I think they brought in some better defenders, although I don't think it's enough. I still think the defense is going to get torn to shreds by some of the top teams in the Western Conference. So I think they're good. They're not championship contenders. And with a player like Luka, that's not really good enough to consistently be a good but not great type of squad. Luka could be competing for MVPs every single season if the Mavericks were good enough. He should be competing for spots in the NBA Finals. He has a chance to build a legacy as one of the greatest players of all time, but has been somewhat held back by just poor roster construction around him, bad decisions by the front office. And I know he probably loves being over there in Dallas, but it hasn't gone well up to this point. I mean, it's gone fine, But when you have a generational talent like Luka, he probably looks at himself as maybe the best player in the world. He doesn't want to be missing the playoffs or missing the play-in even like he did this past season. So if they continue to not make great decisions, if they don't put more talent around him, and if they disappoint this season, maybe the next one, maybe Luka starts considering a trade request. Or he's got about 3 years left on his contract. It's this season, the next, and the one after that. Then he's got a player option. At 27 years old, he is almost 100% going to decline that and go into free agency. And if the Mavs haven't done enough to make him feel like he can compete for a championship over there consistently, I could certainly see him walking. I mean, Luka on the open market is going to be insane. He's going to be given so much money. At that point, contracts will probably be up to near $70 million per year. A Luka free agency, like I mentioned with the Giannis one, would be ridiculous. And again, the Mavericks probably have about 2 seasons left to prove to Luka that they can help him win a championship. And if not, I think there's a good chance he walks. Next, let's talk about Zion, who's a bit of a different case from those other 3 guys. Each of them have really not been in any trade talks over the course of their careers, while Zion was in some trade conversations as recently as like a month ago. When the NBA draft rolled around, as some of you will probably remember, there was a rumor that the Pelicans could look to trade either him or Brandon Ingram, and in particular, the rumor centered around him in exchange for a pick to try and draft Scoot Henderson. They liked him that much. They thought he could be a co-star next to Brandon Ingram. We don't know if those trade talks ever officially happened or if the teams got close ever. But now we kind of know that maybe they're looking to move off of Zion at some point soon. And me personally, I said this when the rumor came around, I wouldn't trade Zion. I know the injuries have been a big concern, but if he can stay healthy, he's consistently a top 10 player in this league. He's a generational talent. The 2019 draft was called the Zion draft for a reason. He's a 27-10 machine that can handle the ball, incredibly physical. Again, maybe the health never comes around, but I'm just not risking that if I'm a front office. But the Pelicans seem to maybe be considering the possibility. They might be unwilling to continuously deal with the question marks surrounding him due to injuries. The rumors that maybe he's unhappy in New Orleans have popped up every now and again. I don't know if there's any truth to those, but that could be something else that plays into this. They might just want a more reliable co-star to be out there on the court next to Brandon Ingram, who hasn't even been that healthy as of late himself. Like really over the course of his career, I think people don't realize that Brandon Ingram himself is also somewhat injury prone. But yeah, having 2 injury prone stars, one of which in Zion, who has missed multiple full seasons, it feels like, and he played about half of this past season, which he was great in when he was out there, but again, he's not really usually out there. So maybe Zion ends up getting traded at some point soon. Maybe they try to do a similar thing in this upcoming draft. If Zion again has a pretty up and down year with the injuries and they really like a prospect, maybe a young star or even established superstar becomes available, they trade Zion in that package, because if they put Zion out there, there's really not that many teams that can compete with him as a centerpiece for a deal. So maybe one of those other guys that we talked about becomes available and Zion gets moved in that type of deal to bring in another star to New Orleans. All those are possibilities, but it's just interesting to think about the possibility of them giving up on him with so much potential still because of the injuries. There's a duo of guys that I believe belong in this conversation too over there in LA, and that's Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Ever since they got here in the 2019 offseason with lofty championship expectations, the team has somewhat consistently underperformed. They blew a 3-1 lead in their first season. They made their first ever conference finals as a franchise, but Kawhi Leonard got hurt. They missed the playoffs once this past season. They looked good against the Suns, but Paul George missed the entire series. Kawhi Leonard only played the beginning of it because he got hurt. They're just consistently injured. They can never seem to keep both of those guys, or even sometimes one of those guys, on the court. And they've both got player options for this upcoming offseason. So there's a chance that they could each be free agents going into next summer. And I don't understand why they wouldn't. Test their value out there on the open market, see what they can get, try and grab one last big 4-year contract as they're both getting up there into their mid-30s. Why not go ahead and see what you can get? And if the Clippers disappoint again, if one or the other or even both of them are injured throughout the season, maybe they both end up walking. I feel like the Clippers, if they had it their way, would probably say, let's just keep running this thing back over and over and over again with new supporting casts. If just both of them can stay healthy for a full season, or at least have a decently healthy season and playoff run, maybe we can get this thing done, because they've shown flashes at times. but I think there's a real chance that it ends after this season. And finally, one more player I want to touch on before we get to the conclusion of this video, and that's Trae Young. I think there's also a chance that he ends up leaving Atlanta at some point soon. There's been rumors over the last calendar year or so that he has some problems with the front office. We know there was that incident with him and the coaching staff, particularly Nate McMillan. They made the DeJounte Murray trade to try and give him another star. It didn't really work. I never loved that trade because in theory the two guys fit together, but when you took a deeper look at it, it just didn't seem like he was the right star to go ahead and trade a few picks for. They traded John Collins for basically nothing because he was bad this past season. They're trying to salary dump either Clint Capella or DeAndre Hunter, and maybe they can lure another star over there. Maybe it's Pascal Siakam, who is rumored to be a star that they're looking at. But I don't think a big three of DeJounte Murray, Pascal Siakam, and Trae Young is a championship contender, or at least not the team to beat out there in the Eastern Conference. So I just don't see a path to where the Hawks get themselves a championship contention anytime soon. Trae said after that 2021 Eastern Conference Finals run that he really wants deep playoff success again. That's what he's been longing for ever since they made it to that point. And I just don't see any way that the Hawks are able to keep bringing that to the table over the next few years. I think maybe that results in Trae Young asking out and going somewhere else. So yeah, those are some of the biggest names that we should consider as potentially being on the move at some point soon. If I had to pick one of these guys to make like an official prediction as the guy, I think I'll probably go with Zion. I could see the Clippers guys trying to run this thing back again, just liking living in Los Angeles. The other guys on the list, I would be surprised if at this point, July 17th of 2024, if they're not on their same roster, even though I think a change could come very soon, like within the next summer. But Zion, if there's another injury-prone season, which I think is very possible if the Pelicans disappoint, the rumor that he was potentially in trade talks this past draft, to me, it seems like they're really angling to maybe move on from him if this season doesn't go well for the Pelicans. So I'm going to make him my official prediction as the next superstar caliber player that gets dealt outside of, Damian Lillard, who is going to be moved at some point soon. So yeah, let me know in the comment section below if you think any of these guys are going to get dealt or walk in free agency at any point in the near future. Let me know also down below if there's any names that I missed on this list that you think also could potentially be in this conversation. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.